G'day and welcome to the latest edition of Emerging Meta in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. This video is brought to you in partnership with AOS Reminders, and I'll be using their data to deep dive into the most popular list choices during the month of December 2019. This video is using predictive analytics to help you to understand the trends you are likely to see on the gaming table soon, and I'll be highlighting the trends to understand the elements that you may want to incorporate into your own list design and help you to understand and prepare what your opponents are likely to bring on the tabletop. This data is generated by players like you who are building their list through AOS Reminders. If you'd also like to understand the win-loss tournament performance, I'd highly recommend you go check out The Honest Wargamer after this video, as their descriptive analytics will complement our predictive analytics dataset really well. So let's dig in and understand what is emerging in the game today. Now, December was a very important month when you think about the AOS landscape. There was a number of significant changes that will influence the tabletop in the near future. Not only have we recently had the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS, the OGOR MAWTRIBES, the Cities of Sigmar and the Auric War Clans starting to hit the gaming table, but we've also seen the Slaves to Darkness and Everchosen combined into a new battle tome. So we have potentially a new massive force coming down the line when it comes to Archaon and his Vanguard. But will they shift the meta? Only time's going to tell. Games Workshop released their 6-month update to the game, which not only had a robust FAQ, but they also had points adjustments. They also released a White Dwarf that included 3 Nighthorn battalions, which may increase the likelihood of seeing Nighthorn on the table. To top all of that off, we had the announcement of 2 new battle tomes that'll hit the shelf in January. While we won't get the full picture of the popularity of the Disciples of Tzeentch or the Kharadron Overlords until the next month, I'm sure eager generals will start building their lists to understand how these factions may sit in the current meta. During this month of December, we saw 9,938 lists generated in AOS Reminders. Of the list generated, the most popular allegiances were the Stormcast Eternals, the OGOR MAWTRIBES, OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS, Slaves to Darkness, Cities of Sigmar, Sylvaneth, Nighthorn, Beasts of Chaos, Khorne and IRONJAWZ. Between these top 10 factions, they contributed to 59% of the list generated this month. Rising up the ranks between November and December were the Stormcast Eternals, who previously were in that top 5, top 10, but they've really taken on that number 1 spot. But we've also seen the Beasts of Chaos and the Slaves to Darkness rise into that top 10. The most notable drop-off when it comes to that top 10 to top 20 is the Legions of Nagash. Now, they're actually not featured in the top 20 at all. So it makes you wonder, have these players brought their Nagash and brought it into the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS? Are they trying a new death faction like Nighthorn or the Flesh Eater Courts? Or are they moved away from death entirely and playing a completely different allegiance? So let's dig a little bit deeper into some of these numbers and what's actually going to be involved in the lists. And we'll start off with the Realms of Origin. From the 7 realms available for selection, where your army comes from, we've seen that Shyish and Akshi are the most popular realms for battle. Now, this theme of armies coming from the realms of Shyish and Akshi have been consistent month on month. So in November they were strong, in December they continue to be strong. But there was a slight drop-off in November. Gairan and Ulgu had the biggest increase over December, and we saw both of these realms jump up an additional 5% each from previous months. The big loser in all of this, though, is Hysh and Shimon, who remain not only the least popular realm to choose from because of the artifacts available, but they also lost additional points, so they're actually slipping further behind some of the other realms. So what are these artifacts that are being chosen by the realms? Well, remembering that Akshi and Shyish are the most popular realms, you can start to look from the top 3 artifacts from each of the realms. There are common themes, and the 2 themes that really stand out for me is defensive-based artifacts and movement-based artifacts. When you look at the defensive-based artifacts, you have things like the Ethereal Amulet, the Griffeather Charm, the Ignax Scales, the Doppelganger Cloak, and the Ragged Cloak, that are all providing a defensive-based benefit, whether it's a minus to hit, whether it's an unrendable save, or whether it's an additional save for mortal wounds. On the other side of the fence, we have 2 different cloaks that are going to be available that are going to affect and impact the movement of a model. We also have offensive-based artifacts like the Gaia Strike and the Sword of Judgment that are going to really pack a punch with your heroes, while the Aether Quartz Brooch remains a very popular utility-based artifact for generating command points. So how do these malign sorcery artifacts stack up against the allegiance-based artifacts? Well, we start to see that the most chosen artifacts through December were the Godbone Armor, the Ethereal Amulet, the Splatter Cleaver, and the Brandisfard. Now, we talked about the Godbone Armor last month, where the OSSIARCH Bone Reaper artifact is a mandatory requirement. It's the first artifact you take if you choose the Petrifex Elite Legion. So that's the sub-allegiance behind the OSSIARCH Bone Reapers. Now, we know, based on the current meta and the last episode, that the Petrifex Elite are the primary or the most popular builds within the OSSIARCH Bone Reapers. So it's no surprise to see this at the top. The Ethereal Amulet comes in second, and we can see from Malign Sorcery, this is an artifact that allows you to ignore armor modifiers. So very, very popular, especially when it comes to things like Stonehorns, things like Maw Crushers. Very, very popular. You have the Splatter Cleaver and the Brand of Svard, both coming from the Ogre MAWTRIBES, and they both are mandatory artifacts. If you take the Blood Gullet MAWTRIBE, that you have to take the Splatter Cleaver, or if you take the Boulderhead MAWTRIBE, you have to take the Brand of Svard. So the Brand of Svard, basically, if you have the bearer has a mount, add 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made by the melee weapons. So it's really packing a punch with somebody on a mount. Or if you're going down the Splatter Cleaver, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, and at the end of the combat phase, if any wounds were inflicted by an enemy model and it's not negated, they're going to be able to heal D3 wounds for every friendly Blood Gullet unit wholly within 12. So it's going to be a real healing magnet if you're not saving your arm saves. Additional artifacts that are available from Malign Sorcery that were popular were the Ignax Scales, the Griffeather Charm, the Aether Quartz Brooch, the Thermal Rider Cloak, and Gaia Strike. They all ranked within the top 20, while other allegiance-based artifacts that ranked in the top 20 included things like Stormcast Eternals having the Godforged Blade and the Soul Thief. Fireslayers had the Tyrant Slayer, Sylvaneth had the Frozen Kernel and the Chalice of Nectar, Gloomspite had the Clammy Cow, Nurgle had the Wither Stave, Nighthorn had the Beacon of Nagashazar, Khorne had the Thronebreaker Torque and the Skull Shard Mantle, and the IRONJAWZ had the Sun Blessed Armor. When we drill down a little bit further into those top 4 Malign Sorcery artifacts that are available to everybody, you've got the Ethereal Amulet, the Ignax Scales, the Aether Quartz Brooch, and the Thermal Rider Cloak, all quite popular. Now, when you drill a little bit deeper into who's taking them, you start to understand why they're taking them. So we have things like the Ethereal Amulet's been taken 238 times, and of those choices, 65 of the choices are coming from the Ogre MAWTRIBE. So we can only assume it's going on something like a Stonehorn. The second choice would be the IRONJAWZ at 36. So again, in a very similar vein of the Stonehorn, there's a good chance this is going on a Maw Crusher. Finally, the Seraphon are the third people who take this at 20 choices for the Ethereal Amulet. Ignax Scales comes in at 119 choices, and of that, 46, almost 50%, are coming from the cities of Sigmar. 20 are coming from the Stormcast Eternal, while 9 are coming from the Seraphon. So the Ignax Scales, a very good chance that of those 48 are likely a very high chance of coming from Hallowheart, and Hallowheart would likely be taking that on a Hurricanum or a Luminarch, to combined with their command ability. That has changed a little bit with the FAQ, but nonetheless, it's something that certainly is don't leave home without it if you're taking a Hurricanum. The Aether Quartz Brooch was taken at 116 times, of which the Nighthaunt, who are very command heavy, and so are the IRONJAWZ, both coming in at 19 and 16 choices respectively. So again, really looking to generate additional command points to help them with the range of things that they have available to them, whether it's re-rolling charges, whether it's a whole bunch of combat stacks. And then finally, the Legion of Grief, which is a sub-allegiance to the Legions of Nagash, coming in from Forbidden Power, that expansion. They've also taken the Eighth Quartz Brooch. Finally, the Thermal Rider Cloak being taken 114 times, of which 36 of those coming from Slaanesh. So you imagine that the additional move and fly ability is likely going on something like a Keeper of Secrets, and then 18 going to the MAWTRIBES and Flying Stonehorns, and then 9 to the Slaves to Darkness. So I'm not sure exactly where in the Slaves to Darkness that would be going into, but nonetheless you can start to see and connect the dots on who's taking what artifact. When it comes to the endless spells, we can see that there are some very popular choices. We can see that in December, the Balewind Vortex, the Bone-Tied Shrieker, the Chronomatic Cogs, and the Umbral Spell Portal were our top 4, while we also still had the Purple Sun, the Geminids, the Prismatic Palisades, the Quicksilver Swords, Emerald Life Swarm, Aether Void Pendulum, Soul Snare Shackles, and the Gravetide were all quite popular choices in the top 20. When it comes to the top 3 endless spell choices, a lot hasn't really changed between November and December. However, we have seen the Umbral Spell Portal jump into 4th, where previously in November we saw Geminids were definitely at that in the top 4. When you look at some of the rules at a very high level, just to go over very quickly, the Balewind Vortex does increase a wizard's casting range of 6 inches, as well as gives them an additional +1 to save. The Bone Shrieker, which comes from a OSSIARCH Bone Reaper army, is going to give them a +1 to hit for models that are within 12 inches of the endless spell, and it also subtracts bravery to enemies. The Chronomatic Cogs allows you to speed up time and increase the movement of everyone on the board by 2 inches, or you can slow down time and cast an additional spell and re-roll the failed armor saves for that wizard. Finally, the Umbral Spell Portal allows you to cast a spell or throw an endless spell through the Umbral Spell Portal. So it essentially increases the range of 1 spell. Of the other choices, what's being popular from the allegiance-based endless spells / prayers? Khorne has the Wraith Axe and the Hex Gorgeous Skulls, which are both very popular choices when it comes to Khorne. Stormcast Eternals are bringing the Everblaze Comet, though you may be surprised down the track to see that it's not specifically always the Stormcast Eternal Allegiance taking this. It actually could be maybe a Cities of Sigmar army coming in and bringing in like a Knight Incantor. We have the OSSIARCH Bone Reapers bringing in the Nightmare Predator and the Soul Stealer Carrion. Flesh Eater Quartz is taking the Chalice to really heal up their big bad monsters like the Terrorgeist. Sylvaneth taking the Glade Worm, and the Fire Slayers bringing the Runic Firewall. Drilling down a little bit further into those most chosen endless spells from Malign Sorcery / Forbidden Power, you can see that the top 4 are the Balewind, the Chronomatic Cogs, the Umbral Spell Portal, and the Purple Sun of Shyish. Who are taking these artifacts? So these endless spells. The Balewind Vortex was taken 354 times, of which Seraphon took them 70 times. That's 20% of people taking the Balewind Vortex are coming from Seraphon, and 55 coming from Tzeentch. So both of them are very spellcasting based armies, and Seraphon, by sacrificing that additional cast, will allow them to generate additional summoning points, while Tzeentch, as we know, currently, in the old book, having additional spells cast successfully are going to allow them to get summoning points. And then finally, the OGOR MAWTRIBES taking it 49 times. So potentially, maybe a butcher sitting behind the lines next to the Maw Pot, throwing something across the board. While the Chronomatic Cogs taken 159 times, again coming from Seraphon, Nighthaunt, and Tzeentch. So potentially looking to speed up or speed down time. I think there's a good use case for both of them in all three of those armies. The Umbral Spell Portal was taken 150 times, of which 37 came from the cities of Sigmar. Really good chance that of those 37 cities of Sigmar armies, many of them will probably Hallowheart. There is a spell within Hallowheart called the Elemental Cyclone that allows you to roll a dice for every model in the unit, and on a 4+ they take a mortal wound. So if I've got a unit of 40 models, I roll 40 dice, and the likelihood is I would kill 20 with a mortal wound. So very, very potent. It's a very short range spell, but under the cities of Sigmar using the Umbral Spell Portal, that really does increase the range across the board. On top of that, you've got the Tzeentch taking it. Again, they've got some very potent but very short-range spells that would benefit from the Umbral Spell Portal, something like from the Gort Summoner. And the Grand Host of Nagash, Umbral Spell Portal could be a Curse of Years, or it could be a Hand of Dust, or it could be a number of spells, but you can see that those three are the most popular choosers of the Umbral Spell Portal. Finally, the Purple Sun of Shyish was taken 134 times, of which it was taken by Tzeentch 37 times, potentially in combination with Destiny Dice, 21 times with the cities of Sigmar, and then 11 times from the Gloomspite Gits. So being a former Gloomspite Gits player, you got lots of bodies, you can throw it, and you don't have to worry too much. You're just killing generic grots. So now we've looked at some of the more accessible things for everybody. I guess now we should drill down a little bit further to understand what is popular at an allegiance level that you might want to be across, or you might want to be incorporating into your own list. So starting off with the most chosen battalions in December, they were the IRONJAWZ Iron Fist, the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS Mortek Shield Corps, Fire Slayers Lords of the Lodge, and then Khorne's Gore Pilgrims. So there are a whole bunch of other ones that we can see. Sylvaneth have Outcast Forest Folk and Free Spirits. Stormcast Eternals have the Hailstorm Battery and the Cleansing Phalanx. Slaanesh have the Supreme Saborites. Seraphon has the Thunderquake Starhost. Ogre MAWTRIBES have the Goremand and the Earlbad and the Butcher's Band. Nighthaunt have the Shroud Guard and the Chain Guard. And Khorne are also taking the Tyrants of Blood, and IRONJAWZ are also taking the Ardfist. Gloomspite Gits represent to my people. They're taking the Squig Rider Stampede. I'm all for taking lots of squigs on the table. So that's what's quite popular. If you're not familiar with some of those top 4 battalions, the Iron Fist allows you to, in your hero phase, use the Mighty Destroyer command ability from the IRONJAWZ legions for free. Now, what is the Mighty Destroyer's ability? So for 1 command point, pick a friendly IRONJAWZ unit that's wholly within 12 of a hero or 18 of your general. If there are no enemy models within 12, it can move. Cool. 1 command point gets a free move if there's nothing within 12. If the model is between 3 and 12, you can make a charge move. Awesome. Or if they're already within 3, then they can immediately fight. So you're getting a hero phase combat, and then they're going to be able to benefit again in the combat phase. So for 1 CP, you can see this very valuable, and then obviously once per hero phase under the Iron Fists, you get that for free. The Mortek Shield Corps is a very, very similar type of battalion, where you basically get a battalion, or you get a benefit for no command point. Now, the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS don't have a command point system. They have a different points-based system, but it works nonetheless the same. But what they get to do is, with the Mortek Shield Corps, once per turn, you can use the shield wall for one of your units in the battalion without spending one of those points. So what that does for the Mortek Guard with a Hekatos is it allows them to re-roll their save rolls until the end of the combat phase. Now, it's pretty brutal when you think about the Petrifex Elite, who have a Mortek Guard will likely have a 3+ armor save that they're re-rolling. And then on top of that, they have like a deathless, after saves. And then, pretty hard to take down those Petrifex Elite, and you can see why they are a popular choice within the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS. Lords of the Lodge, when it comes to the Fire Slayers, allows the Hearthguard Berserkers in the battalion to pile in and attack twice in each combat phase, as long as they're wholly within 12 inches of the hero from the battalion. Now, Hearthguard Berserkers are rock solid, they're super durable, and they also pack a whole lot of punch, and having them pile in attack twice just makes them a whole lot harder. The Gore Pilgrims is a double benefit for our Khorne friends. You've got the Acolytes of Khorne, which allows you to re-roll dice re-roll the dice roll when attempting the Blood-Fueled Prayer or the Blood Blessing with Khorne the Slaughter Priest, or increases the range of the it allows you to increase the range of the battalion's Bloodsecrator Rage of Khorne. So you're increasing it by 6 for everyone in the battalion. That's within 8 of the Slaughter Priest. So it's interesting to see how penetrated some of these battalions are within a faction when you start comparing the list being generated versus how many are sitting in the list. So a prime example here, and obviously we could compare this to all the battalions, but a mere snapshot shows that 1 in 4 Slaanesh armies are taking the Supreme Sabirites to assist their general, assist in generating command points, while 1 in 2 Ironjawz and Fire Slayers players approximately, are taking the retrospective battalions, whether it's Lords of the Lodge or the Iron Fist. So we're starting to see some real solid penetration. Khorne, almost 1 in 5. OSSIARCH Bonereapers, 1 in 6, 1 in 7, are taking the Mortek Shield Corp. And you can see Shroud Guard is also a popular choice, and as is the Thunderquake Starhost. So if you are playing some of these armies, or you do have a bunch of Sylvaneth or Seraphon or Nighthaunt players in your local community, there is a good chance that they are running one of these battalions. When it comes to the most chosen allies in December, may come as no surprise that Gotrek is the #1 choice when it comes to allies, followed by the Fungoid Cave Shaman. New entries this month is the Vampire Lord and the Dire Wolves. Both Gotrek and the Cave Shaman featured as top allies in November. Gotrek is a brutal combat machine that could be a really powerful way to handle some of these armies like the OSSIARCH Bonereapers with their Petrifex. Or, a Keeper of Secrets could be a really great way of adding some combat punch to your force. While the Fungoid Cave Shaman in a Destruction army is a cheap spellcaster that generates command points for those hungry War Clan forces. Looking at a little bit of the other two, so we got the Vampire Lord. Now he or she is a very utility multi-use hero that is going to provide +1 melee attacks to friendly death units within 15 inches for a command point. That's pretty good value. You can put it on a horse or it can fly. So if you're running, or you've got like a super fast Nighthaunt army, there's a very good chance that this Vampire Lord that flies will be able to keep up with your army. It does have a once per battle healing chalice, so it can choose to drink the chalice and it'll heal D6 wounds. And overall, it's quite solid in combat. It's got a good to hit, wound, rend, and damage output. So wonderful ally for Nighthaunt. I'm not sure which factions are allying in the Dire Wolves. However, they are a cheap and fast unit, which is perfect for screening and securing early objectives. To round out December's list, we're going to deep dive into the top 5 allegiances that were built over the month to identify some of the trends that you may want to prepare for. Now, the top 5 armies, just to remind you at the start of the episode, we were looking at Stormcast Eternals, the OGOR MAWTRIBES, the OSSIARCH Bonereapers, the Slaves to Darkness, and the Cities of Sigmar. Now, there is a lot of data available, so I don't think you guys want to hear me talk about this for 7 hours. So we're just going to talk about just some of the key things that you should probably look at. However, feel free to pause this video at any time and look at some of the other things that I've highlighted on the infographic, essentially. Just an FYI, quick heads up, I noticed that in the individual data here, there were a few discrepancies that there was a few duplications when it came to a bug in the reporting that has been resolved for future months, and it only is in a few data sets. So if you see some data that looks a bit weird, know that it was a bug that has been worked out, so bear with me. To start things off, we'll look at the Stormcast Eternals. They had the most amount of lists generated in December with 878 lists created. A few worthy callouts that you might want to consider is that the hammers of Sigmar and the anvils of Heldenhammer accounted for about 80% of the sub-allegiance. Sorry, Martin Orlando, your Celestial Vindicators didn't even hit 10% of the chosen sub-allegiance. So it might be worthwhile, if you have a lot of Stormcast in your area, looking up the hammers of Sigmar and the anvils of Heldenhammer's allegiance abilities, so you get across what they do. We can look at the Celestial Ballista. Is quite a popular unit choice, and it's no surprise that the Hailstorm Battery is one of very popular battalions that Stormcast are taking. Not only that, but the Cleansing Phalanx is also a popular choice. However, if you look at the penetration rates, that only 50 or 60 of those battalions were chosen out of the total 878, you can see that the Stormcast aren't an army that requires battalions to really make the most of their force. So there's a good likelihood that you may have the choice of who goes first against a Stormcast army. We can see here they have a number of heroes, and a number of different heroes, funnily. You know, we've got the Knight Incantor, wonderful spellcaster. We have the Lord Relictor, who casts prayers. We have the Lord Ordinator, who's a buffing up war machines, and we've got the Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. So all of these different units are wonderful leader choices that people are taking, and I guess depends on the army that you're building. And we can see the top 10 unit choices here. As we've got Evocators, Liberators, Judicators, Castigators. Castigators actually for their points are starting to see some more time on the tabletop. You've got the Everblaze Comet that is appearing more and more in Stormcast armies, although I did mention earlier in this show that there was a lot more Everblaze Comets being chosen in December lists. But what you can appreciate is that because the Everblaze Comet is such a wonderful spell, you can essentially drop a comet 36 inches away from the caster, and it does basically an area damage of within 10 inches and then 5 inches later in the game. People are taking this. Anyone who can ally with Stormcast is basically trying to get this in a list in some cases. So good to see the Stormcast Eternals with their Everblaze Comet and their Knight Incantor. Finally, you're seeing a whole bunch of people taking up a bunch of spells like the Healing Light, the Spirit Storm, and Empower. They are very much going to feature in lists that you are going to be up against. Next on the list, we've got the OGOR MAWTRIBES. They were the second most generated with 696 lists being created. A few worthy callouts again is we have things like the Balewind Vortex, which is their preferred endless spell, with over 40 choices out of the 600 odd. When you compare that to some of the other endless spells, things like the Burning Head, Chromatic Cogs, the Prismatic Palisades, they've got very, very, very low selection. So it looks like the OGOR MAWTRIBES is not taking a lot of endless spells, and that's probably because not a lot of casters in this army. However, if they are taking one, it is the Balewind Vortex. We can see of the tribes being selected, we've got things like the Boulderhead and the Blood Gullet. Now, the Boulderhead is popular if you're building a very Beast Claw Raider type heavy, kind of, Stonehorns, Frost Sabers, Thunder Tusks. There's a lot of different choices under that army, but, if you're going down that old Beast Claw Raider route, Boulderhead is the primary MAWTRIBE people are taking. If you're going down more of that traditional ogre, kind of like the Gutbuster build, the Blood Gullet seems to be the one that people are taking, and they're both hovering around the 40% mark. So you can see that they are a clear winner in this book. The Ethereal Amulet is the first choice artifact when it comes to the MAWTRIBES, based on, taking things like the Stonehorn, having I think a Stonehorn from memory has like a 3+ armor save, making it unrenderable is very, very powerful. However, there are other things that people are playing with, whether it's the Thermal Rider Cloak and making a flying Stonehorn, but that is not showing up in our top 5. We've got a bunch of whole other things like the Ogre Gluttons are becoming a very, very popular build, and the Butcher's benefits are pretty solid, which is why we're seeing approximately 40% of those lists featuring gluttons and or butchers. When it comes to the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS, who were the third most generated lists with 685 lists created. A few worthy callouts. I have mentioned a few times now that Petrifex Elite is still the highest chosen sub-allegiance, and it's easy to see why. Their whole army gets +1 to their armor save, so Battle Line is on a 3+ armor save. Many of their elite units are on a 2+ armor save, and it provides them additional +1 rend that they deal in combat. 1 in every 3 lists, if you look at the unit selections, are taking a Harvester. So Harvesters are a nice little model that sits often behind the lines of things like the Mortek Guard, and their ability very much is about regenerating bodies. So they don't have grave sites like the Legions of Nagash, but they are able to generate their bodies by models like the Harvester. So if you do see an army take a Harvester, and it's 1 in 3, 1 in 4 armies are taking a Harvester, they are a large points allocation, so you may want to take that out early if you can. Finally, things like the Bone Shaper, the Soul Mason, the Liege Cavalos are very popular hero choices in the OSSIARCH BONEREAPERS. However, Arkan the Black is starting to sneak into list design. You can see he's about, I think, 20%, just under 20% right now. So keep an eye out for that one. And we did mention that the God Bone armor, which was one of the very popular artifacts, is being driven by the fact that it must be taken in a Petrifex Elite army. When it comes to Slaves to Darkness, they've got a new battle tome, and people are trying to work out what is good and how to build a strong list. And you can see from the 4th most generated list with 601, we don't have a lot of standout winners. Yeah, we have high representation of things like your Chaos Warriors and your Chaos Knights, but across the board, it's very even. So you can see things like the Chaos Sorcerer Lord has always been a popular choice when it comes to a Slaves to Darkness force. However, a surprise that I certainly was kind of like, whoa, what's going on here, was the humble Demon Prince. You don't often see a Demon Prince in the list, but you can see in the data that there's certainly a resurgence when it comes to a Demon Prince. 1 in 5 lists are taking a Demon Prince. The early winners when it comes to the different gods is certainly Nurgle. Nurgle seems to be the one that people are most drawn to, and you can see that in the command abilities and the battalions that Nurgle is standing out. Specifically, we can see the Plague Touch Warband is leading when it comes to battalion choices, and we also have the Bloated Blessing when it comes to the command abilities with Nurgle. I think overall, over the next couple of weeks during January, we will get a better understanding and a better idea of how a Slaves to Darkness force will be built, and people will start testing and playing with their lists. But overall, it looks like there is no clear winner, which is actually not a bad thing. It's certainly not a bad thing, and I hope we see some very interesting builds across all of the Chaos Gods. Finally, we have the cities of Sigmar, who were the 5th most generated with 543 lists created. A few callouts here was that Hallowheart and Tempest Eye were the 2 leading cities out of the book. It just depends on if you're looking for the magical supremacy of Hallowheart or the speed and the shooting that comes with Tempest Eye. That's not to say other things like the Phoenician or the Hammerhall or Anvil Guard are bad. It's just that it seems like people are going towards Hallowheart and Tempest Eye more than the others. We can see here that Free Guild is definitely starting to win when it comes to some of the list choices. We've got the Free Guild Handgunner, Free Guild Guard. We've got the Free Guild General. We've got the Free Guild General on Griffin. So we're starting to see some synergies. And you look at the command abilities, we've got the Hold the Line. So Hold the Line allows people, Free Guild to have +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So that's a nice little combination that people are playing around. And whether you throw them up the board with the Soul Scream Bridge or other forms of teleporting, but you are seeing some combinations under the cities of Sigmar through the Free Guild. When it comes to the artifact choices, artifacts work a little bit different in the cities of Sigmar. You are landlocked to one of the 2 realms. Each city is in one of 2 realms, so you don't get the choice of going to Shaiish, for example. And each city obviously has their own artifacts, but there's a whole range of different options, but the one that stands out the most, and I did mention it a little bit earlier, is Ignax Scales. Now, Ignax Scales combines quite well with Halo Heart's command ability. That was tweaked in the FAQ in December. So will that impact Ignax Scales in future months? We don't know. But right now, Ignax Scales ignoring mortal wounds on a 4+ is a wonderful, wonderful artifact, and more than just Cities of Sigmar are using that. The empowering of the realm, so endless spells get an additional benefit if it's cast by a Cities of Sigmar wizard, and you can see things like the Emerald Life Swarm, the Umbral Spell Portal, Geminids, the Balewind, and the Quicksilver Swords are all very popular. The Emerald Life Swarm, for example, is a wonderful choice when you look at it. Brings back D6 models in a unit. So when you look at things like the Phoenix Guard and the Iron Drakes, which are two very powerful unit selections in this book, you're able to bring back D6 of those models. Take a sorceress, can get a +2 to her cast, or the Hurricanum with a +1 to cast. All of a sudden, a nice little magical bubble, and you've got quite a resilient force. So that's the Cities of Sigmar. And look, there's a lot of data that we could have gone through, and I hope you found this 40-odd minutes valuable. I think as you start thinking about the meta and the landscape is always changing, how Kharadron Overlords, how Tzeentch are going to come to the table, and what the other army is going to look like. How do people handle Kharadron Overlords shooting and the movement around with their boats? How do we handle the magical supremacy of Tzeentch? If Petrifix Elite is here to stay, how do we continue to handle that? So as armies kind of evolve and shift, so will our opponents' armies evolve and shift. But in the meantime, I think this should be enough to start thinking about how you handle 2020 and what you may want to add to your list. If you did find this video valuable, I'd appreciate it if you smash the like button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you're taking. If you're taking Direwolves, I'd love to know why you're taking Direwolves. Is it for the speed? Is it for the cheap battle lines, kind of the cheap bodies? Or is there some secret list tech that I'm missing? Special thanks to AOS Reminders, who is no sponsor of mine. I'm not getting any money for this, but that website is a wonderful tool to help you get better at your game by simply and easily allowing you to have all of your rules on one document, and it's ordered by phase. So you can see what's happening in your hero phase at the start, middle, and end. So even as a checklist, it's a pretty cool tool. So big props to AOS Reminders. Thank you for the data here. If you've enjoyed this video, again, like, subscribe, comment. Until next time, happy wargaming. Get back in there and roll lots of 6s.